All right.
It is 7:02 on the 27th of January, and this is our Community Housing Board meeting. So I think maybe the first thing we should do is talk about the minutes. I'm wondering if anyone has any issue. We're approving minutes for I think it's actually 3 meetings, right? So it's
I think so. Yeah.
last week's, the week before, and then I believe it was December 22nd, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that. Yeah.
Anybody got anything to say about any of the minutes?
Nope. I make a motion to approve them.
Okay,
I second.
great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Cool. So great. On to the next one here. I have next on the agenda the 7 Jasper Road special community housing license application. Basically, I think if we want to talk about that a bit tonight, we can do that. I think that basically, so for anyone that's not aware, we came up, there's a bit in a different section of the code that says that any property with an accessory dwelling, that either the primary or the accessory dwelling needs to be owner occupied. And this is an instance of that not being the
Hey,
case.
listen, I gotta go. I got a meeting I gotta go to.
I'll talk to you later.
All right, buddy.
I hope that you're not talking to us, Jerry.
No.
And so basically, there's a couple of whatever, I have discussed it with some members in the housing board. It seems like at this point, we can't really approve this application given the owner occupied deal. I do think that as a housing board, it's really worth us making a recommendation to the town board to change this bit of legislation in order to allow the facilitation of more community housing and year-round rentals in general. That being said, I feel like the way that this has come up is pretty short notice before this application hearing. And I think it would be really worth it for all the members of the housing board to take a good look at the community housing floating zone piece of the legislation. And I think we should really consider if saying to go that route as opposed to changing the current owner occupied requirement that would be required for the special community housing license, trying to figure out what way to go with that. So Matt, just so, I mean, you already know, but basically you could definitely apply for this via the community housing floating zone.
Hey, Chris, can I jump in a minute?
Yeah.
I think you should avoid the floating zone for individual projects. That's more for what we're gonna try to do with housing in general.
Right.
Okay.
So I do think that it does in general seem like a bigger project sort of deal. I will say the only time we ever had an application for that was for, I don't know if there was actually an actual application, but when Janelyn did her thing on 114, that was for an individual property for a single structure. And as I read the law, it is indeed, whatever. I would say that the randos could certainly make an application through that process to try to do this. I would actually like to see the making of the special community housing license, that there be an exception for this in relation to that, because it is way less of an onerous project or process. So I think that the special community housing license in this instance, it would be really great for it to be able to work for something like this. But I would just say the kind of the way that I feel about it is, as all of this came up yesterday, rather than recommending to the board that we change this, I think maybe it's worth all of us taking a deeper read into this and also consulting with the building department as well as town attorney on this. But I want to see how the other members of the housing board feel about that.
Hey, Chris, just so I can give you a sort of a place to start. Your options are essentially this. You can, exactly as you said, you could ask the town board to change the code. And I think I would do that, notwithstanding what happens with this application. If that's what you're interested in doing long term. The floating zone, while as Jerry said, might be designed for is certainly something they could apply for. And their third option basically would be to go to the ZBA and get a variance for this, for that particular issue.
Yeah.
What is the least bureaucratically onerous of any of these choices?
It's like of the two for this particular project, it's it's between the ZBA and the floating zone. Now, I can't tell you too much about the floating zone because we haven't really done it before. So I'm not sure exactly how that process would play out.
My hesitancy with the floating zone is, one of the big arguments we're getting from the anti-housing people is spot zoning. So if we're going to use the floating zone, I'd rather use it for a significant project, at least the first time.
Okay.
I would think that the ZBA is a more known process and probably a, you're not going to run into the, well, what do we do now moment with it as much as you might with the floating zone.
Bob, I would think we should look to change the code.
I agree.
I absolutely agree with you. I'm just, understanding what sometimes gets involved in code changes
Right.
and how long those things get dragged out just to move this particular project along. I would probably do both things at the same time. I would
Yeah.
be moving to change the code, but at the same time, get them moving down the ZBA process.
And
in case that code change and get stuck in, definition.
And Chris, I would suggest we do it like we did before is, your group comes to a work session and says, this is the problem we're having and we feel we need to address this in the code. Make the presentation to us.
So I do have one thing to say. Whatever, that's what I want to see us do. But I think before we get ahead of ourselves in making a recommendation to do that at the moment, I think it's important that we review the law and see if there's anything else that we want to change within it. I actually think that there's like a couple other bits of wording that are a little funny to me. The sort of language around whether it has to be within an existing structure, I think needs a little bit of clarification. And I basically, if the town board's going to go through the process in changing the code around something like this to make it easier to facilitate housing, I just want to make sure that we're trying to hit all the points that need to get hit on this.
Do them all at once.
Yeah, exactly. Do it once and do it right.
I don't want it to be that we try to change this owner occupied rule and then on the next application that something comes up and we're like, oh shit, we should have changed that too.
Right. Yep.
So
I understand what you're saying, but I also think that, I think this one's a small enough thing that you may be able to do it relatively easy. I think a complete overhaul, you're going to end up getting yourselves into long debates on this. The other thing is with looking through the statute as a whole, New York State at the moment is looking to significantly alter the way that accessory buildings are dealt with in a way that will require us to completely rewrite the code to comply with their statutory requirements.
Mhm.
And so, that's looking at like something that would happen in April or May. So, I'm not necessarily sure it's worthwhile to do a complete rewrite at this point in time until we know what's going on with that.
I guess I'm not necessarily proposing that either, Bob. I do think though that there's yeah, I
There are a couple little things you want to pick off. We can do that. I think that would, that would be probably the way to go rather than, anything dramatic.
I mean that's sort of my feeling on it. I would like the existing structure language to be cleaned up a little bit in addition to the owner occupied bit. And I also think it's important to ensure that we have proper wording around what would give an exemption to the owner occupied deal, i.e. making sure that both pieces are year-round rentals, and just whatever. I think there's some things to consider in how that is worded as well.
Mhm.
So I don't know how is everyone else on the board feeling about this? Is this something, are you guys interested in trying to make a recommendation about this? Should we have try to come up with various points that we maybe want to change about this law and try and do a presentation to the town board about that in the next couple of weeks or something?
Let's move this application along, whatever we have to do.
Agree.
So I do also want to say, I think, so when I spoke to Bran about this, he made an interesting point, which is in particular relating to this application, our job is to grant the special community housing license. It is not our responsibility to ensure the other parts of the code around this,
Mhm.
i.e. the building department could bring up the issue of the owner occupancy. We don't necessarily have to take that into consideration ourselves. I think it would be maybe a bit foolish not to. Yeah, right. Basically, I mean, right now we could grant the special community housing license just to this house as it is, regardless of anything that ever happens going forward on the property. Am I sort of saying the right thing here, Bran?
As far as I understand it, if that's what we're being asked to do is grant the special license for the existing house.
And
I
then
think-
they have to get town, Suffolk County approval. That's all up to them.
Right.
You could actually
Yeah.
put it in you can put it into the license if you'd like, if you want to like show that you're cognizant of those issues, that this license is subject to compliance with all building and zoning codes.
Right. Which I think is part of the housing license right now. So all we want to do is just say we want to move this forward. We want to make this possible. Here's our stamp of approval.
What's everyone's thoughts on that?
I say, let's do it. Get it going as quickly as possible. Matt, what do you think with the Suffolk County Health Department? Do you think? All in all, do you see any problems?
Yeah, the only issue with the health department is that the idea on this site is to have the existing 2-bedroom structure turning into the community housing building, and then the property owners want to build a second 3-bedroom structure in the back of the property. What that basically does is require that the town sign off that the accessory building, which would be the existing one, that the accessory apartment, as the health department would view it, complies with the town zoning code, and it doesn't. And so the building department can't sign off on the application to the health department. So we either have to get it approved through the ZBA, as you guys are talking about, or get an exception made to the zoning code from the town board. Either one of those avenues will work. So, having you guys approve the license on it may help with our presentation to the ZBA, which it looks like would be our next step in order to try and get that ZBA approval so that we can then go to the health department. Once we get the clearance from the town to go to the health department, I can design a site plan on this that meets all of the health department requirements. We can get a deep enough well, we can get the separation distance we need from septic systems. The well that was installed on the property right next door had nitrates at less than 2. George Hubbard at the other end of the road, same thing. I've got another nitrate test over down by Midway, which has it at non-detect. So I'm pretty confident that the water quality on this site will be good. And I know that I can design a site to meet the other health department requirements. So, as long as we can get the town to sign off in one form or the other that we're okay with the zoning code, then the health department shouldn't be a problem at all to handle.
Why doesn't the front the pre-existing house meet code or?
It does, but putting the second dwelling on this property is what doesn't meet code. So they could take it just as the building that's there now and put that into the community housing program. They absolutely could do that without doing anything else to the property. It's got a certificate of occupancy. They would have to get inspections from the building department to make sure that all the life safety aspects and all those things were handled. It's the idea of putting that second dwelling unit on the property that does not necessarily meet town code. And I think to what Brian and Chris were just saying, that's really not your problem. Your problem is, can this 2-bedroom dwelling be brought into the community housing program? And then, so we can take that recommendation and then I can approach the town board or the ZBA, whichever is more appropriate, as far as getting approval for that second building on site.
Sounds like a pretty
Okay.
good way to go forward.
Yeah,
Mm.
Agree.
Okay.
do we just make a motion to accept it and let them go forward with Matt to, present it to the ZBA in the town?
Right, so I do want to do what you were suggesting, Bob, in terms of approval with some sort of requirement that the rest of the stuff gets approved.
Yeah, as Brad was saying earlier, I think that's already in, your sort of mandate for this. So you
Mhm.
just make sure that it gets into with the license when the license itself is written up.
So then I guess my procedural question is when we approve the application, is a license immediately granted?
Well, it would be, but they couldn't operationally use it yet because, they don't have Suffolk County Health and all that. It would all be contingent on those things being completed. You could also put the language in the license that this language shall become effective upon receipt of approval from the, from the zoning board and building department or whatever.
Right, well, I think that that's the move, and I think the other consideration is right, because otherwise then there's just a license granted now, basically. I mean, it says it's subject to review from the building department.
Mhm.
But in order to actually have the license, it doesn't need to be inspected by the building department. It's just that it's subject to.
Well, the license, not for the license itself, I mean, to actually build the building, yes.
Right, but
Not just to grant the community housing license now.
so just hear me out on this. So this is my thought right now is if we say just in general, yes to the license, they would actually get the license right now. And then there's people that are currently living in the house that are not on the registry and whatever. And is there a thing that then if this doesn't get approved, that they are locked into the license without getting the rest of the deal?
No, because it's really, it's contingent on allowing the license is granted as basically compensation. We're being compensated by allowing them to build an additional building. That's the sort of consideration for the license. So if that's not completed, then the basic contract law no longer applies.
Right. So, hey, Matt, could you just, now that Phil's back in here on this meeting, could you just repeat your bit to give him a little bit of a heads up in terms
Yeah.
of what you're,
Yeah, no problem. The issues with this property, there's a couple of different issues as far as the town zoning code is concerned. Number one, it's a half an acre. In order to, there's an existing single-family dwelling on it. We want approval to put a second single-family dwelling. So the existing house would turn into the accessory apartment as 2 bedrooms. The new house will have 3 bedrooms. The new house, the randos are looking to either have one of their kids in it or family member. If not, then they'll rent it out on their own. And then the existing house is what would go into the community housing program. Because the lot size is only a half an acre, it's too small as far as the town zoning is concerned to have a second dwelling unit or an accessory apartment on it. So that's one problem. The other problem is having the accessory apartment as a community housing rental without having a owner occupied primary dwelling. So that's our 2 variance issues as far as the town zoning code is concerned. We can't apply to the health department for a sanitary upgrade and a well upgrade on a property that requires a variance from the town zoning code without getting a sign off from the building department that we meet that code or that a variance has been acquired. And the variance for the community housing program, this is part of what I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around, is we can either get a variance from the ZBA for those 2 issues, the insufficient lot size and not being owner occupied in the main building, or my understanding previously was that the town board would have the authority to waive any zoning requirements. I don't know if that's necessarily the case now. And I don't know if it has to go through the floating zone in order for the town board to waive any of those zoning requirements. So that's basically, if you guys approve the community housing license, that's great. We can, start moving forward on the rest of it. But it does leave us a little bit of a to-do list, whether it's town board, whether it's ZBA, we'll have to figure that out.
What does the community housing board license allow? Does it allow the 2 dwellings on a smaller than normal lot?
Correct. Or
Right, so-
setbacks, pretty much any, it basically allows you to work around some of the zoning laws.
So that license, so that might preclude the need for a variance for the lot size, Matt. Is that correct?
Is he right on that, Bob? I'm not sure if I understand it the same way.
I believe so. Unfortunately, the way that the floating zone is written isn't really written the way that a regular piece of zoning legislation would be, that you're allowed to do X, Y, and Z, and it changes this and that. It basically just says it gives relief from the zoning code.
And that has to be going through the floating zone. There's not another mechanism to do that?
Not that the town board actually cannot do zoning. It's, by law, that has to be the zoning board. The town board can't interfere other than to actually change the code.
Okay.
Right, I mean, so the ZBA can't change the code, the town board changes the code, the ZBA can, whatever, give some relief from the code.
ZBA can give relief, the town board can't. So they're split those, the idea was to split up those 2 functions.
And then let me ask another question. Is the thought that having the primary dwelling non-owner occupied desirable to the community housing board?
if there was a stipulation that it was a year-round rental, I think that we are all in agreement that that would be a win.
I think the way I would word it would essentially be that the unit has to be owner occupied unless it is rented subject to a community housing license, in which case at least, or at least one of the buildings is rented pursuant to a community housing license. That's it,
Right.
very short and to the point.
But it- both 2 year-round rentals, at least one of which is in the community housing program.
Right, yeah.
And
Okay.
I had this conversation with Michael Shatkin.
We can't do anything with regard to the, well, no.
I had this conversation with Shatkin early, the other day. So we kind of worked through a little bit of this. And one of the things that it looks like you would need to get a variance in order to have anything other than a year-round rental in the second building, because you can't have a short-term rental unless the main building is owner occupied, is the way I understand the code to write. So it's already written into the code that if the front building is a community housing building, the back building can't be a vacation rental. It has to be a long-term rental. So it's, it's there already. So having that kind of a provision in the approval, it reiterates what's already the code requirement, which is fine. If that gives the board gives the committee a sense of being more comfortable with the idea of not having the main building be owner occupied, there's no problem with that.
I think they both should be year-round rentals.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
I'll have to look into whether
Well,
or not
I
we
would
can
say this
actually
as far as
require that for the
ZBA goes.
primary one. Or for the, but I'll let you know about that. I'll look. I'm not sure
I
that
mean,
I'm-
Bob, look, if there's an ask, if the applicants are asking for something, it is certainly possible for them to offer something in return that makes everybody
What
happy.
what I'm saying is that might need to be done as part of the licensing and not in code.
So just as far as the ZBA goes, if you folks feel that something needs to come to us, we're happy to hear it. And just to try to do the right thing for the town.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say?
Nope, I think we should just, work this out and get it moving forward as quickly as possible, because they might lose interest.
Mm-hmm. Right, I
And then
mean, that's an
you know,
important part of this.
Yeah,
I agree with Peter.
Yeah, me too. Anything that can incentivize people. And so we start the process and we can, the better.
I don't know if we need to have a meeting with a town board rep, a ZBA rep, and a community housing board rep. I'm open to that at everybody else's convenience.
Well, they're all here now.
Right, but I'm completely unprepared for this.
Yeah. I'm pretty unprepared for this.
So
It might be helpful for all of us at some point, because there's a lot of, it seems like one thing is on contingent upon another. And at least for me, new to the housing board, which part of the decision-making process we're actually allowed to do is, fuzzy.
Yeah.
But we want to let this move forward, and I think we should, kind of just give it a vote of confidence and keep. I don't know if we're going to approve it tonight, but I think we all want to make it happen.
yeah.
And even if you're not going to approve it tonight, I can go back to the randos and say, we're on the right path. We're all heading in the exact same direction. Let's, get our act together and get in front of the ZBA as soon as we can. So, we get that end of it going, because that process has some time associated with it. It wouldn't take anywhere near as long, I don't think, as the floating zone would. So, that's a benefit, going the route of the ZBA. And then, keep marching forward and hopefully by, another few months, we'll be well into the ZBA process, and then maybe we'll be able to, start the health department process a little bit sooner.
I agree.
So, yeah, basically, I feel like unless, if anyone wants to speak out against this or say otherwise, my personal feeling is the move is to just give this a little bit more time to think about exactly what the deal is. I'm reluctant to just say yes to this application and feel regretful of that. I would like to discuss it a little bit more, but that being said, I would also like to come up with some sort of resolution on this, not a month from now, but sooner than that. What do y'all think about that? Peter, you look distraught.
I just don't want them to lose interest and have them pull out later on. So maybe Matt has a good idea, encourage them to start moving ahead with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody on this board has a problem with them, doing this project.
I
Right.
can pretty much tell you if they're going to be going to the ZBA, that they're certainly not going to be through with that process in less than a month or so anyway.
Yep.
Even
And
if-
I would just ask that you guys sort of come up with what you want them to ask for from the ZBA. Because if you're allowed to grant the license that allows them to use a smaller lot, then they don't need to get that from us.
Yep.
And perhaps it's just something where we could hear their appeal for relief from having owner occupied in the main house.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that they do need relief from.
Okay, so I mean, maybe that's the thing that we'll have to come to the ZBA for. But just if you guys can take care of the smaller lot thing on your end, then it sort of simplifies the process for us.
I don't
I think
think that we have the power to take care of the smaller lot thing. Maybe Robert can correct me on that, but before I stop speaking about this, and maybe it's already been said, is that the primary residence would be a single family residence as opposed to an accessory apartment. And the relief from the ZBA would be relief from the criteria that it must be owner occupied. So that the complexion or the appearance of this would be a single family residence, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, and then an accessory apartment with up to 5 people living in it. And the town makes no stipulation as to whether those people are related or unrelated.
Right,
And I
that's
wanted
correct.
to
The
put
town
that
can't,
out
I
because that
believe.
represents the
the-
current status, I think, of.
Yeah, the town's
But the
not
board is-
allowed to make a distinction between related and unrelated.
Yeah, they,
It's a federal law.
Between related and unrelated.
Yeah.
Right.
But the building code does make that distinction.
Yeah, but it might still be in there, but it's void as a matter of law. Because the federal courts have overruled
It
it.
comes to the classification of the residence and what type of construction considerations are required.
Yeah. You
Depending
can
on
limit,
how many
you can limit the
unrelated
number of
fam-
people. You just can't say whether or not they are family because we don't define family the way we used to.
Yeah. It's discriminatory.
But Michael, you came in a few minutes late, so just kind of to recap just real quick what I was explaining what the project is in general. The existing single-family dwelling will turn into the accessory apartment and will be the 2-bedroom community housing unit. The new building that will be constructed will be a 3-bedroom primary residence. So yes, that will be the principal residence on site. The existing house will turn into the accessory apartment or the accessory dwelling on site. The idea, what you had brought up when we had talked of having that main house be a year-round rental, that's not a problem. The code would require it to be anyway. The relief that we would need from the ZBA would be for a lot that's undersized, being a half an acre when it should be 3/4 of an acre, and then the main building not being owner occupied. So, there's nothing we can do about the lot size, obviously, but we can certainly, have some kind of consideration for a relaxation of that owner occupied status by saying it has to be a year-round rental or, something to that effect.
Perfect.
So what does everyone think about maybe meeting about this again in 2 weeks as the housing board? Or next week?
And what would be the change between, we would just be doing a little bit more of a deep dive? Is that the goal? Or what other information do we need to say yay or nay?
I'm basically feeling a little uncertain of this, and I'm worried we're going to make a mess.
Okay, so we just need to do more. We need to go into it a little bit more is what you're saying.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know.
I think if we're going to meet again, we need to meet next week. I don't want to draw this. If you really feel like we need to spend more time with this, I just don't want to draw this out for these folks any longer than it has to be.
Agree.
I agree too.
Chris, I think the group as a whole supports the concept of the application. So I
Yeah.
think the next step is
Yeah.
how do we legally make it work?
Which is Bob's department.
And Phil should chime in too, I think.
And I think it's going to be very important just for this to move forward in the right way, to get all those i's dotted and all those t's crossed.
Yeah, because I know I've got at least one coming on the heels of this. It's a little bit different because it will be owner occupied, but as being the first one of this kind, it is going to set the precedent for what's coming on behind it. So, I can get the ZBA end going. We're going to have a little bit of time for that just because of the way that their process works. I would like to have it come out of your committee sooner rather than later, but I also don't want to give a false sense of urgency that's not going to be, it's not going to, the ZBA process is not going to be held up by an extra couple of weeks of you guys deliberating this and making sure that everybody's comfortable with it.
Mhm.
And Chris, just to follow up on what Phil said, this is the first one and a lot of people are going to be watching. So we don't want to make it onerous. We want to make sure it works because, Matt, I know there's another one right behind it, but I'm sure there's a lot of people thinking about it and they say, well, if it's going to be this much of a hassle, forget about it. So I think the first one, we have to make sure we do right.
Right,
But first,
but I also think what Brand
this one has
said,
a- Go
we
ahead.
just, like what Brand said, we just approve it. Yes, it looks good.
Right.
It's up to the town,
Yep.
all the other departments to get it passed.
Right.
So I don't know why we're dragging it out for another week.
I'm obviously the person who's uncomfortable with this, and my comfort discomfort comes from getting ahead of the ZBA process. I would like the neighbors in this area to have the right to weigh in on this. And if we were to approve it this evening, I would like it to be conditional upon achieving a ZBA variance from owner occupied to a year-round single-family rental unit. I would not want to see on this property the operation of 2 accessory apartment units, because I think that creates a different type of situation than what was contemplated within the accessory dwelling unit code, which does couple things that we're going beyond. So nobody should draw any conclusions from this. The things that we're going beyond, this is a special case. We're giving up the supervision of an owner occupancy. And if we're not careful in the wording, we could be, I'm not saying we are, but there is the potential, if the wording is not concise, that we're creating 2 accessory apartment units on the same property. And I think wouldn't be a great first step for this community housing advisory board or community housing board to make in front of the community with regard to our actions. I would like to see us approach this with care to make certain that we're actually getting what we're asking for and not get ahead of the ZBA in the owner's comments.
But how would we, I don't understand how we get ahead of the ZBA. They're gonna have to go through it anyway. Why
They
can't we?
have to go
just say
through it
yes?
anyhow. So the only way
Yes,
we get
why
ahead
can't
of
we
it
just say, that
is if
sounds
we-
great, you
if
guys
we-
go and check, because the
we-
ZBA can say you can't do 2 at a time if we can't, right?
The only way we would get ahead of it is if we, without stipulation, say that we approve this without reference. I would just feel more comfortable if it references the rest of the process, if we choose to approve it at this time.
I think we would absolutely be doing that.
Michael, that's fine. However, the law actually already requires that. It has to be compliant with the zoning codes, and Suffolk County Health requires that as well. So without either being zoning compliant or getting the ZBA approval, they couldn't move forward with the project in any event.
I think it's still important that we have that in the language of the approval, though, for the application. Just so we're covering our end, saying, hey, this is good, but this other stuff needs to happen.
Correct.
Okay, well, basically, I think we should do that.
Can I make one suggestion to you guys? Is that you all maybe decide what you want to have exactly in your resolution to approve whatever it is that you're going to approve, whatever conditions you want to have. Everybody make up your lists and be ready to go when the very next time you're together.
Mhm.
My only thing for that would be, it has to be, they both have to be year round.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
Same.
I agree.
And I would add to that, the language is clear on the subject of that we're not approving, and I don't want to put it in those terms, I want to put it in the affirmative terms, that we're approving a single family residence in conjunction with issuing this license and an accessory apartment. I want to be abundantly clear that there's no opportunity for this particular site to turn into 2 accessory apartments, because that's a bigger leap.
I think that's fair.
I'm not sure, how do you determine that it's, so what, do they have to both be guaranteed full year rentals to make them not accessory?
Well, I don't know, and maybe Matt can tell us on what basis this property has been rented in the past and moving
It's been
forward.
It's been rented as just a single family rental. I don't know if there's a difference between saying it's a single family residence and a 3-bedroom single family residence and a 2-bedroom accessory apartment, or saying it's a 3-bedroom accessory apartment and a 3-bedroom accessory apartment. I think you're getting hung up on, just let me finish. I think you're getting hung up on the linguistics of it. It's, you've got a 3-bedroom house and a 2-bedroom house. The 2-bedroom house will be in the community housing program, The 3-bedroom house will be rented by the property owners on a full-time basis. And that's what the site will be. You can call them both houses. You can call them both accessory apartments. You could call them both either, whatever you want to. That's the reality. You've got 2 year-round rentals. One's got 3 bedrooms, one's got 2 bedrooms. That's pretty much it.
So the key word there is year round.
I think so. And that's fine. There's no problem with that whatsoever.
You know, and the reality is someone could buy that house, knock it down, put up a 3,500 square foot, 6-bedroom or 7-bedroom, 5-bathroom house there. So it's really not a more intensive use of the property than could be attained otherwise.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Great
But,
point.
You know, as far as usage goes, there's no practical difference between a single family house and an accessory. You can basically do the same thing with either of them.
Does that assuage some of your concerns, Michael?
Well,
I mean, it sounds pretty it sounded pretty self-explanatory.
I guess, I may be painting a picture which is different than reality, but I'll share with you the picture that I'm painting, and that is that as an accessory, one building, Matt, the smaller one is 1,000 square feet or less.
Yeah, it's right about 900, give or
100.
take a couple.
It's 900 square feet, and the larger one is
Is 1370.
1370.
Yeah.
So in accordance with the town code, we are permitted to have 6 people in the larger one and 5 people in the smaller one. The smaller 2-bedroom, 900 square foot unit accommodates five people. That's 2 people per bedroom and 1 person in the common area. Depending how it gets rented and utilized, that's not a lot of space for individual people. And within a community housing program, I would hope to see us address a higher standard in terms of square footage. And I recognize that's the current reality of the code.
I don't think that we need to be trying to create additional restrictions beyond what is currently on the books, as that is the standard for what all housing currently is. I don't think there's any reason to set up rules preventing it as such, given the fact that we are in the midst of a housing crisis and need more housing, as opposed to trying to find ways to restrict it.
Yeah.
And I'm not in a position to judge that. And I yield to other people that have a greater understanding as to how acute this housing need is. It just, as a designer and somebody who's involved in planning, it strikes me as a minimum level of accommodation for the group that's allowed within the unit. And I realize that's not a criteria, and that we have a need which requires us to dig deep and to permit this to happen. And it's according to code.
Yep.
And I know I can say that the best house I've ever owned was my wife and I's first house. It was 900 square feet, and there were 4 of us living there. It was 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. It was you don't have a lot of room to stretch out, but you've got plenty of room for a young family or a group of people. So I take your point.
As
but
a young family, I completely agree.
I think that I think it's a win.
As a young family, I completely agree. As another set of living accommodations for a different, more diverse type of group, I am left with a level of discomfort.
I don't
But-
think we can judge who gets who, we can't, I don't think we're in a position of assessing who is allowed to rent under what circumstances. It sounds to me what was explained, if I got it right, is that there will be 2 units on the property. They have to fall within the zoning laws that are already on the books. And we are not going to have to go above and beyond anything that has been done before on Jasper Road or anywhere else to get these 2 things going. Am I right?
I think that's a fair assessment, and I just wanted the opportunity to sort of voice the level of concern with regard to this.
Yeah. mean, I think
And
it's also
I
gonna
yield
be-
to the collective wisdom of the board and to the acute need to get housing at any level out
Yeah.
into the community.
So y'all want to approve this with stipulation that they have to be 2 year round?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I don't know the process for something like this as far as if we need to write out some sort of language for this, Bob. Can we just say what we want?
Well, why don't you guys get down what you want? And then I'll take a look at it and then make sure it's put in the proper language.
Cool. Amber?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. So you're trying to, at this point, grant a license? Because, I
Correct.
mean, there are stipulations within the town code as to what there has to be a formal application, which maybe there hasn't, I just haven't
We
seen
have
it.
it.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
you
have-
do?
It's sent
Okay,
it in.
okay, I apologize then. Okay,
We have everything we need as far as review of this goes. We have the full application. There's all the copies required sent into the town hall, and as I see it, the application is complete. It's just awaiting approval or not. So Bob, can I just get your opinion on this? So we need to write up some sort of language, get it approved by you, and then we should have another meeting to approve the permit if we're going to do that. Is that
Yeah, then you'll vote on the actual language of the permit.
okay? So if everyone is down, I would like to do that next Thursday.
Well, can't you we send everything to Bob, Bob writes it up and then he just emails it out and we say yes or no, or change this, change that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Easier that way.
Yeah,
but-
we could just do by email. Or
But I do,
Oh.
maybe I can get a little guidance here is, do we need to have a public meeting to do that? Like we're not going to vote yes on language we don't have right now.
Well, you don't need to have a public meeting to have everybody independently write things up and send it in. You do need a public meeting for the vote.
Right.
Okay.
okay.
We need the language before we have the vote.
Right.
So does it sound good to everyone that we do it next Thursday? Work on the language with
Sure.
Bob for the week, and then
As long as we can be assured that we all have seen it, so we don't have to go through it while we're together.
Yep.
So it really is just somebody reads it out loud, then we all say yes, and then it moves forward. That would be good.
Okay.
So Bob, my question is, everyone says yes and we move forward. What does that mean, move forward? Do we then present it to the town board at a work session, or what do we do?
Yeah, well, then, and that, we'll probably go to the ZBA next, if they're going that route. If they want a code change, that would go to the town board.
Yeah.
right. So I think unless they go through the floating zone, which would be one way of doing the code change. Alternatively, the code change would happen from us making a recommendation to the town board and them deciding to take that on.
My suggestion is, or my concern is that, we do this one, like I said, we do this one right. And as soon as this group's comfortable, we present it to the public at a work session. And I don't know, Phil, if that's before the zoning board gets involved or, you know, I just want to make sure, you know, again, people know what the process is and that we're moving forward on it. I don't want to spring it on them at the end.
Look. Something.
I feel like we have a couple different processes going on. The owner occupied deal, Jerry, is a separate from what the housing board is dealing with.
No,
That's-
I want to deal with Chris with what the housing board's dealing with.
Right.
And this is the first application that we're acting on. So I want to make, you know, if in fact we can just approve the application as is, then it's up to the town board. I want that explained that, you know, this is the housing board's decision. We approved this application as it is, and now the town board has to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
I think correct me if I'm wrong, but the way to move forward on this would be for us to do a simple resolution saying that we support the issuance of the license and recognize that it must go to the zoning board of appeals to address the issue of owner occupancy as a variance, and that we stipulate that both units be full-time
Year
rentals.
round.
And that's what we do, and then it moves to the ZBA, and they grant the variance. And that's a pretty public process. The neighbors in the area are notified, and that's the opportunity for the public to weigh in.
Well, I think that's actually not a bad idea because that could operate essentially as a denial letter to get you to the ZBA or to get them to the ZBA. It's an administrative determination. So that'll give them their sort of entree to the ZBA. You could put, as far as the year-round thing, that should be in the license, but that's not a ZBA issue. So that should be something that's stipulated within the license itself.
So I think we would be in a position to write this up and get it in a position where it can go to the ZBA in the manner you just described. And then it's up to the ZBA based upon the reaction of the surrounding community that would be notified, as well as the community at large, to judge the issue of non-owner occupancy variance.
So if I'm hearing this right, everybody wants this project to move forward. And based on what Michael said, Bob, you should draft the resolution for everyone to agree upon. I don't know that they would need to wait a week to discuss it then.
I don't think we really need to. I mean, I think we just need the language, and we need that in order to vote yes, because that I'm not going to vote yes on something without
Right.
having the language in front of me.
Could we move forward to other agenda items and come
Yeah.
back? Bob, is that too much to ask?
Oh, no, that's fine.
Okay.
But no,
I'm just trying to categorize in my head. So the only things that need to go in as far as the licenses, that both things are rented year round, that that there's the ZBA needs to waive the owner occupied and that the lot coverage.
Correct. And
Okay.
that's it. Yep.
All right, so those are the criticals. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
And it's, Bob,
right.
just to clarify, not lot coverage, lot size.
Okay.
Lot size, yeah. Thank you.
So
Thank
should
you. I
we,
appreciate that.
All right, I'll talk to you tomorrow on this, Matt. And
Yeah,
we'll kind
yeah,
of,
we'll square away. Yep.
I'll say goodbye to you all.
Thanks, Phil.
thanks for coming
Thanks.
in. Great. So, all right, let me pull up the agenda here. We're
I
on
think we
to
have updated. Yeah.
okay, so Matt, maybe you could give us a update on some of the stuff that's going on Manwaring.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. We've got a initial review and conceptual approval from Health Department, the Office of Wastewater Management. They're okay with the overall site design. They're okay with the water supply and the sanitary design. We're looking to get a transfer of development rights from the nursery property that's adjacent and right behind the Manwaring property. We're going to have to go to the health department for a variance to do that. But I've spoke with our reviewer on it and kind of tried to strategize a little bit of how we're going to focus that argument of why it should be approved. So that's going to be coming up here in the next few weeks. It's 4 units Michael had designed. I think they're somewhere around 1,300 feet each. What are they? 2 bedrooms on the second floor, living room, living area on the first floor, kitchen, dining room, living room. Kind of just set up in a country lane kind of design. So it's it's looking promising right now, but we have to get to the next step of the health department, which is the board of review asking for that variance. The site is over density, and what the health department does is, based on, you all might know this already, but in the risk of telling you something you already know, the health department allows us to put a certain amount of development on a given site based on the square footage of that piece of property, the acreage. We're going to be over double what they would typically allow for a site like this. So we do have that working against us, being able to do that transfer of development rights from the nursery property will help us in that regard. So we've got a little bit of heavy lifting still ahead of us, but at least we're well underway with these guys.
Great.
That's great.
That's great news.
Yeah. Is there anything we can do to support it? Anything in particular?
There isn't just yet, but there will be. When it comes time to go to the board of review, they have a hearing, and we need to justify our case. And at that time, either a written correspondence from you guys or having 1 or 2 of you at the meeting to help put that point across that this is a desperately needed community housing program. The health department, almost to a fault, but they almost take a little bit of pride in the fact that that's not their focus. That's not their focus is public health and safety with respect to water supply and sanitary. They sympathize with the fact that affordable housing is an issue, community housing is an issue, things along those lines. But at the same time, that's not their focus. So it is going to take a little bit more than just, me cheering it on that it's a great idea. Having you guys on board and some of the town board members as well to help try and sell it to the board of review is going to be helpful. So that's going to be a little bit down the road. I'd imagine, probably a couple of months away, but we're trying to get it to happen as fast as possible. And I'll let you guys all know. So if any or all of you want to join in on the discussion, the board of review is having all of their hearings are on Zoom. There's no indication that that's going to change anytime soon. So,
Okay.
We'll keep you all abreast of what's going on with that.
Great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Matt, I would just like to say, I think you could definitely get at least a couple of us there.
Good.
I think we would definitely want to give written approval, but I think it would also be really good for at least a couple of us to be there. And additionally, I think that we may be able to get some members of the general public to come and support as well.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, the more people, the better. More often than not with zoning or with health department variances, the only people who show up are the people who don't want whatever it is you're asking for. But so to have people to come who are in favor of a variance, it's not going to turn a hard no into a yes, but if they're even slightly on the fence, it could certainly help sway them in the right direction.
Great. Good to know.
Matt, I just have one question in regard to process, and that is, if this project, and I would hope this would definitely not be the case, but if it is denied, and we were to resubmit it with a material change to, I'll say, infrastructure or design, we have that option.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the future.
And what will probably happen, and obviously this is just pure speculation at this stage of the game, but we're going in there with 4 buildings. I think their bigger problem is going to be that we are so far over what we're allowed to do on the site just as of right. So we're so far over density. What may end up coming out of the board of review hearing is if they have a problem with how much over density they may come back and tell us, we're not going to approve 4 buildings, but if you reduce it to 3 buildings, we'll approve that. It's not a horse trade. It's not a negotiation, but they are, the board has on applications in the past come back with an alternative. And if it's acceptable to the applicant, then you all move forward. So it's not necessarily just a hard yes or a hard no. They may be willing to work with us a little bit in order to mitigate their concerns, but still meet our needs as much as we can.
Well, let's go on with 6 buildings then.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I like that spirit.
Can we also get a report on the South Ferry Road site in terms of where?
You can, but that's an extremely short report. There is nothing happening with it right now. We haven't submitted to the health department yet. So we've got the design done. We just haven't moved forward on it yet.
And the issue of, I guess the question would be the issue of the phase 2 report on that site.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Amber,
And I don't know where that
can you
stands.
speak to that?
Yeah, I don't either. I didn't get a chance to check in. I think Joe Fenora's been honchoing that. Jerry, I don't know if you're still listening, if you had a chance to find out anything on that.
Yeah, but the test results were good. There's no brownfield, there's no problems there.
Oh, good.
That's
Great.
ready to go to the next phase.
So has the board, I don't know what the terminology is. Has the board accepted that report yet?
We didn't get it. We didn't officially get this second one. That's what I heard from Joe this week.
Yeah, no, I was in communication with Joe as well. I just wanted to see, basically, once that's ready to send out, I would like to just send that out to the whole group so that everyone can see it or whatever.
Yep.
And so whatever, once the board accepts that, I would just like to get a heads up about that. And then can we get an update on what's going on with the transfer of development rights legislation?
I don't know, Bob, where are we with that?
It's sitting there waiting to be talked about and voted on.
I think we'll probably put that on either this work session or the next one. Get that moving.
Can for the benefit of the group, can you explain what that is going to facilitate?
Yeah.
Well, going forward, it's going to allow us to any future purchases. We can take the development rights from the land that the Community Preservation Fund is preserving and use transfer it to another parcel to offset the density, to increase the density of the parcel that we want to use.
Michael, what they actually are sanitary flow credits.
Yes. So, but Mike, I understand that. What I would like to get a sense of in relationship to the proposed projects that are out there, to what degree we have TDRs to cover the entirety of the Man-Waring site and the entirety of the South Ferry Road site. That's 16 units on the South Ferry site. We have, I guess, on a 4-acre parcel, 2 as of right dwelling units, and we would require 12 TDRs. Are those available or within? the
I think
community?
right now we have 8 TDRs from the county. The county told us we had 8 credits, so we have to, we have to get more. We have to see if we can transfer some of the ones we have. We have some lands that weren't bought with CPF money where we bought the development rights, so maybe we can, or actually that the town outright owns, so maybe we can do something with that. So I mean, we have to, we're behind the 8 ball in the TDRs in the sense that we don't have them, the 12 we need right now, Michael, but we're working to get them.
Okay.
And one of the things Amber and I discussed today was we were looking at some CPF things, and they have the Community Preservation Fund Advisory Committee, which is composed of all 5 towns. And apparently in 2013, Shelter Island asked the advisory council if using CPF funds for affordable housing, and they were told specifically that you have to enact the transfer of development rights into your town code. So the town has known about it for 8 years and has done nothing. So that's, if we get any feedback on it, that's what we'll, go forward with.
I will say it was actually in the CPF section of the code. There's just no procedures set up to actually collect and
Right.
store the development rights.
Right.
That was something that was
But the town was notified of that in 2013.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So it's a little bit of an uphill battle, but we're going there.
we're confident it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I guess the only other site to be brought to the attention of the board would be, what is it? I'm going to get the address wrong. 95.
69 North Ferry
69.
Road.
Of course,
We're-
you're
we're,
graduated.
We're setting a public hearing tomorrow to buy the land for affordable housing. It's 1
Oh,
acre
great.
on
We
one
should-
acre on 114.
We should be there for that.
You could be there in Zoom.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Our
I-
virtual presence.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
tomorrow we'll just set the public hearing and then in 3 weeks will be the actual public hearing.
That would be
Okay.
more important that you come in 3
Yeah,
weeks.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's when, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Now, hopefully by then we could meet in public.
Will you guys please make sure that we get a notification for
Oh,
that?
yeah, definitely. Yep.
So I have one question relating to TDRs. And I'm curious if there's possible for us to get any sort of development right out of Sachem's Woods, which is not CPF property.
That's kind of what I was referring to, some of the lands we own and see
Right.
what we can do. So I think we have to do a deep search on what lands that potentially we can do it with that aren't CPF related, Chris.
Yeah.
Just if you, people have talked about that before, like I've heard it in the background about Sachem's Woods, and it's going to be opening up a can of worms.
Well, no, we're not going to build on it, just use the development rights. from
Oh,
the PDD.
okay. I gotcha.
So, right, we're trying to get credit from that for increased density in a different location.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do TDRs only have to do with publicly owned land?
No, it's any preserved land. In other words, if we bought
So-
the development rights to Sylvester Manor, or all the land that we bought the rights to, those development rights could be transferred.
Right. And did Mashamik sell their development rights?
No,
Okay, because that's a big chunk of land
yeah. No,
that's preserved.
yeah, no, Mashamik is totally unpreserved.
Oh, we should talk to the Nature Conservancy then.
But that's federal. Mashamik,
No,
isn't
it's
it?
privately owned.
It's a nonprofit organization, I believe.
Oh.
But, right, I mean,
Just to keep it in the back of your mind, though, it is a third of the island that's preserved.
Yes,
That is
Mhm.
not going to be developed. And, if you're
but that's
concerned,
not written in stone, Brand. That's not.
Yeah.
That has the
Well-
potential to be developed, so.
yeah,
I think it's also worth looking at if we can get potentially, so what's the deal? Didn't Fred Thiel try to pass some legislation allowing us to retroactively get our TDRs
Yeah,
from?
that's gonna be on the November ballot if we approve that, it's all encompassing that legislation, I think, isn't Amber, no?
No, I think what Chris is referring to are the TDRs, and I thought Governor Hochul had signed that we could use past TDRs.
Oh, then we
I
have,
thought, I thought that was going in November, so I have to check that.
Hmm.
Okay.
Well,
So-
yeah, but that's all part of the same legislation. So it would go into effect when voted on in the referendum.
Oh,
It's
okay.
an
I thought
odd
it was
situation.
separate.
There are
Yeah.
some parts of that that went in to effect immediately and others that don't, but I believe that's part of, I'll double check it. But I believe that was.
Yeah, that
part
was
of-
my understanding, Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought it allowed us to use, like, if purchases didn't have, specific covenants placed on them, that we couldn't do housing and things like that, that we could capture those.
I think that will be the standard, but I think it needs to be approved first.
Okay, I misunderstood Fred then.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It was a confusing bit of legislation.
I think what Matt Sherman and I could add to this, and it's probably some people on the board could do this on the fly in their heads, but based upon the property sizes and the as of right development versus the TDRs that each property requires, we could generate just a statement of need in terms of TDRs in relationship to the 8 that we already have. Just so we know what we're striving for. The other question I would have, and I don't want to jump too fast, but it seems like we could be in a position to move forward with floating zones, potentially on these projects. And I just want to get a sense of the board and Jerry and
Michael,
Amber.
before you jumped on, we talked about this in relation to the Jasper Road project, that it could be there. And I emphasize that, we haven't done a floating zone yet. There's a tremendous amount of negativity out there about spot zoning. So I want to, if we're going to do it, I agree it should be for the Manwaring and the highway department sites, as opposed to, but I think we need to wait and really have the plan in before we even talk about it.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear one way or the other.
Because that's the new thing now, is the zoning. It started with the water and now they're throwing the zoning in, but at the bottom, they say they're for housing, so.
Well, then it behooves us not to get ahead of ourselves and
Yes.
and present this before.
No, I think once we have the master plan and we say this is where we would like to do some floating zones, and we put it all together.
Right.
Hey,
Right.
Michael, can I ask you a question? That we're constantly being told you can't do this because it's spot zoning. But what I have what I don't technically understand from a planning perspective is what exactly is the problem with spot voting? Why is it a bad thing?
Well, they're gonna say that, you're ruining our value of our property. We bought this in AAA zone and now you want to, put affordable housing. It's just.
Well, I meant more from a
everything
town
comes down
perspective
to.
than a neighbor perspective.
I understand. No, everything comes down to how is it going to affect my property? My value. And as we said at the meeting the other day, it's, no matter what anybody says, it's not in my backyard. That's the bottom line. So, that's why I want to walk real slow with this one. And when we're ready to propose the first floating zone for housing, that we really have all our ducks in a row.
yeah, I think
would also like to see education take place. And I don't mean that people aren't aware of these things, but I would think there's a knowledge gap with regard to issues pertaining to smart growth, which makes the Manwaring site and the 69 North Ferry Road site and all of our sites ideal sites. So if we could establish that understanding with the public, that we're not suggesting potentially an overall increase by having these spot zones which allow more density, that within the comprehensive plan there might be other locations where potentially density could be decreased. So that we're not suggesting increase in growth for the island population per se, but we're redirecting it to sites in the center where infrastructure and development already exists, rather than sensitive, environmentally sensitive sites, and spreading it out throughout the community.
Bob, what was that?
Mike-
You had sent me an email this week about some conference you went to that actually. the,
Yeah, they talked about
density-
the higher density development, if done properly, is more environmentally friendly than spreading things out.
Yeah.
And
There's
that's
also, we also
what we're
went to
doing.
East Hampton, and I think, you know, like you said, education, and I know the next item on our agenda is communications, but I really think that we need to take this issue of property values head on
Mhm.
and look at examples in other communities, East Hampton, Southampton, and how community housing next to folks' property has affected their property values, and just like give examples.
Actually, it turns out that it hasn't. I mean, those are the
Yeah,
facts.
but I think that's what I'm saying, Maria, is that we have to like illustrate it and address it head on with you know, examples and education.
Yeah,
So.
people will be shocked to find out that there's not one example of property values going down with affordable housing nearby. Not one, anywhere in the country. Part of it also, though, is everybody has an idea of what affordable housing is, which is so negative. So some of it is the education, I think, Michael, that you're talking about, which was why it was so great when you sent us those pictures, the rendering of what it would look like. And we saw an amazing development in East Hampton that really, I don't know anyone who could argue against the plan that we saw, which was kind of like Bowditch Road, but nicer. And it was all income restricted, lottery housing. So it can be done.
Yeah. I think people also have the idea it's going to look something like the Bronx.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
listen, that it's true that some of the stuff we saw in East Hampton, by my personal taste, I would not want to be near it. It was ugly. It was very dense. It was very charmless. Like I thought it was horrible. So, but we're not even going anywhere near the kind of stuff that they're doing. We're just not, there's no comparison. We're not doing hundreds of apartments at once.
Right.
So I think it's important that we get on track here properly with the agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what are we doing now?
So we have a couple things to review. We have communications, the expression of interest. Then we have accessory dwelling units, which is actually something I think we should maybe table until another meeting. And update on the Community Housing Fund Advisory Board solicitation. I think, I don't know, Liz, if you want to maybe talk about communications, as you're the one that suggested adding it to the agenda.
Yeah, so I think that we should potentially do a subcommittee to start kind of putting together some either media or kind of community education around some of this stuff, like maybe figuring out how to, obviously with this board and the town board's approval, but just to kind of start putting out some information on what some of these projects might look like and how community housing might affect our community, I think in a positive way. And also, I think that there's a lot of statistics and stuff out there that could be really helpful and compelling for folks if they could see it as to why this is a big need. But what I think is even more important is just for us to be a voice and be talking about it. Because right now, the only folks that are talking about it are the folks like kind of taking out full page ads, right, in the Reporter. And so there just needs to be something else that's talking about community housing and the work that we're doing in a positive light, and why there's really a need for it. And so I actually think this is really, really important to start kind of getting some public support. So I feel really strongly about this. And I would be very happy to kind of head this up. So I don't know how anybody feels about that, but
I feel great about it. I love it.
I
want to help too.
basically, I think that we're getting to the point where, right, basically we need to stay ahead of the game here and start putting out some positive messaging. I think the most important thing to keep in mind here is, as we are representatives of the town, we are supposed to be doing a factual representation of what is going on.
absolutely.
That I would just say that to me, that's the biggest thing to keep in mind. But I'm totally in favor of that. I think it's important as a task for the housing board to take on.
Yeah, I think it is really important that we stay neutral, that we just present facts and like just try to educate folks about the legislation that's coming up. Like I said, I think just education is huge. Like there's a bunch of census numbers that are coming out that I think are really relevant and really illustrate why this is so necessary. And so I don't even think we have to offer a ton of opinions necessarily. I think that we can just kind of put this out there. Anyway, I feel really strongly about it. I guess I would say that I think that how it would work is that there would be like a subcommittee of folks that were interested in it. We would put together materials for approval by this board and obviously approval by the town before we kind of put them out on potentially like the town social media or kind of figure out how to kind of distribute it. And obviously making sure that they, that we were following all the legal guidelines. But I think an offensive, like oh my gosh, I'm not playing defense, but playing offense with communication is going to be really crucial. So that's what I'm thinking. I think it would be like a separate meeting other than this meeting. We would come with our findings, like I said, and get everybody's approval before anything happened. But I think it's really important. So
I'm totally in favor of that. I would just say on a logistics front, Liz, you're not actually a member of the community housing board. And so I don't think that you could be the head of that subcommittee. But I think you obviously should work with that subcommittee. Amber, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, have we gotten Paul Curucciolo's resignation letter yet? Or have we reached out to let him know that he needs to submit it?
Christina sent him an email and he confirmed that he got it. So.
Oh, that needs to go to.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure whether it was received by the town clerk yet.
No. I don't mean that he confirmed that he sent it to her. He
acknowledged it. He knows that he's supposed to do it. Maybe he has done so, but we do not know. We haven't heard from the town clerk.
And the reason Amber asked, because we were ready to appoint Liz tomorrow night, but we didn't get his resignation yet.
Let me shoot the email to Dottie right now.
So cool. So as soon as that happens, we can then appoint you, and then you can be the head of that subcommittee.
Oh, thank you very much. I would very much like that.
So I don't know if procedurally, do we have to approve a subcommittee?
Yeah, for a record, that would be practical.
Yeah.
So can I get a motion to create a communications subcommittee?
I second.
I third.
Okay, all in favor?
Yay!
I'm
And can you suggest the head as well and vote on that too?
I can't vote on this because I'm not on the
I
committee.
can't vote. That's
But
all right. I can't vote
You're
either.
excited about it, right?
But I'm very excited about it. I not only on the level that you described, but the concept of having different people take on a deep dive into different tasks is a very important step for this committee to be making. And I hope it is the beginning of a process.
I'll sign up for that.
Hi, Virginia.
Awesome.
Hi, guys.
Yay. All right.
So whatever,
Express-
basically, I just want to review the wording and the procedures, rules and procedures on how a subcommittee operates. And I think we just need to look at that and move forward with that. But I will say that I'm uninterested on being in the communications subcommittee, and it would be great to see some other members of the housing board help take on that role with Liz.
I will.
Oh, I
Me
know
too.
you're in, Maria.
I'm in. I'm on and down.
Cool. So I think we should save the logistics of this for another time
Yeah.
and move on to the expression of interest.
Okay.
And so this is also kind of whatever. Basically, for those of you that are maybe not aware that are here, the expression of interest is essentially a list that we created for people to say that they are in need of housing
Right.
without going through the process of signing up for the housing registry. With the housing registry, you have to submit your taxes and other personal information, all for no housing at this moment. Maria?
I have a quick question. I don't know why that is the case. When I did my research on all the different housing places and housing plans, to sign up for housing and get on a registry, all it asked and I'll have a draft to show you guys, was your name, how long you've lived there, what your job is, how many people in your family, and your income. That was it. Like there was no I mean, if you get approved, if there suddenly is housing, then you go to the next level. But it's like in between what you are suggesting, which is the interest and then the registry.
Mhm.
So I don't know why people would have to be subjected to all that scrutiny if there's nothing to.
That's what Chris said.
Right, but people are not even the expression of interest. There were like 100 people who basically didn't give any information whatsoever.
We didn't ask
Right.
for any.
Yeah. So here's the thing, Marisa, I'm just going to jump in here because I was like working on organizing this list. So I took the list. I think you guys saw the recap that I sent back out.
Yeah.
And I work with Christina to kind of update it. So basically when folks fill out the form, it automatically dumps into like basically a sortable Excel so that we can kind of see what the heck is going on rather than a million little different files.
Right.
So yeah, so that's where we kind of are now. I think that there's a couple things that we could do. I think that, do we want to make our expression of interest form more like what you're talking about, Maria? And if so, are there questions that we want to ask, right? Do we want to kind of develop it as more of a middle step? So that's like one thing to consider. And then the second thing that I would kind of put out there is that we do already have this list. And do we want to reach out to these folks to get whatever that additional information that we are looking for to kind of create this like in between, right? And see if those folks are still interested, especially with some of this housing kind of coming up. I think it would be a really good time to reach out. But I think that the things that we would want to do is really think about, so technically, Christine's been awesome of just like figuring out how to do it, but we would want to figure out what other information that we need from both new people and from the folks that are already on the list. So I think those would be kind of the next steps, I think.
I don't think we should do anything until we get approval for building and we actually break ground. Then that's when it should be updated and sent back out. Okay, these are the parameters. These are going to be for sale.
But in part of our making an argument, and this is something that came up on our East Hampton tour, and this has to do with a needs assessment, which is trying to get a sense of what we are actually building for. In other words, people can say, well, how many people even need housing on this island? So we want to be able to have something that says, well, actually, there's quite a lot of people who need housing. So it's really, to me, just for that purpose in the early stages before we have we've broken ground or anything.
I agree with that from the standpoint of we're now stepping forward to develop different types, or at least early stages of different types of housing. And by one example, the Manwaring site, I would like to query this group and ask within the whole group, or do we have a group of only renters, and or do we have a group that is looking and qualified, that may be another step to purchase an affordable house. And with regard to timing on the Manwaring project, the way in which I financially modeled this was that it has no cash in. The only resource into the project would be some soft costs, which we are actually moving ahead with regard to some of the design work that Matt's been doing in the submittal. And we're going to be asking these people to obtain for the Manwaring site, to obtain a mortgage and a construction loan. And that's how these projects are going to move forward financially. And if we don't have any people on the island, this is an obvious point, but if we don't have people on the island that are going to be able to qualify for a mortgage on, I'll just throw out a number, on a $400,000 house rather than $1 million house, we'd have to wait until we get, significant funding to do a rental project or partner with a developer who will bring significant funding to the project. The Manwaring one is financially independent because it's utilizing the homeowners' funds.
What do you think, Peter?
So Michael, just so I want to make sure I heard you correct, the Manwaring project, somebody's interested in purchasing it, they would get a construction loan first and then turn it over into a conventional?
Yes.
Construction loans, I just got emails today, are extremely hard to come by now.
I have clients that have these loans, and they're going, people who are building houses.
Yeah, well, banks like Wells Fargo just stopped all of them. They're saying, yeah,
then
it's going to be hard. Plus,
realistic. We may not be realistic with regard to being able to do that, and then we'd have to find a funding source.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a subcommittee unto itself.
Plus, there's also two closings with a construction loan. They pay a little bit more. It's costly to the consumer.
So I do want to actually point out one thing relating to this issue that I thought was a really interesting thing in East Hampton. I can't remember what the name of the last place that we went to was, but
Green Hollow.
Say it again.
Green Hollow.
Green Hollow. So first off, I think anyone that hasn't been there should drive through there because it is totally spectacular. When it's like a thing like, I almost don't want to say it so that I don't ruin it for people, but basically you drive in there, and if you were to try to figure out what is the community housing in this regular to residential neighborhood, when we were driving in there, I was thinking, all right, so which of these houses are the ones? Based on everywhere else we've gone, you've been able to tell, and it turned out it was actually every single house in the whole
house
was the affordable housing. And they said that one of the ways that they avoided prevailing wage was by doing this deal with right to build the house and construction loan kind of deal. And so while the construction loan might be more expensive and incur some additional costs, it might be a way for us to avoid construction using prevailing wage, which would bring down costs significantly. And I don't know the logistics of any of that. I know Tom Rule would be more than happy to give us some details on that, but I do think that was an interesting bit of information that they told us about that project.
And my research, without being an attorney, is that there are exceptions for affordable housing, exceptions to the prevailing wage requirement. So those two, my only point in saying that is that those two things may be independent, but I think we need to feel out the lending community, and we should look for a community, a bank that has a community housing or community banking entity within it, because we're looking at, and I'll throw out a number, we're looking at a $1.6 million, and I'm including some things that we probably don't have to front, but we're looking at a $1.5 million project if we don't have the ability for the people who are buying these houses to come to the table with the construction loan that converts to a mortgage.
Well, I think we
we're
could
in the
go,
business of looking at outside funding sources for a significant amount of money.
well, we can definitely, after our tour with Tom Rule, I feel like that we should table the details of that for another meeting, but there's absolutely ways to do it. And the way that they did that particular project was a bond and a land lease, and they told us the financing that they did and the bank. So I think that would be great for another meeting when we summarize everything to get into the finances. But getting back to the point about expression of interest, my question is, can we just I was just wondering, Peter, if what we just discussed in terms of getting needs assessment answers your question about, why would we need more than we already have?
Mhm. I see. I would just wait until we're farther along for that.
Okay.
I wouldn't waste time right now on that. I would just wait a little bit longer until we got Suffolk County Health approval,
Okay.
going back to the mortgage thing. I know when they did the Bowditch Road, the 6 houses down there, Bank of New York back then, when it was in existence, did everything.
Mm.
They all went through, the town, I don't know how they did it. The guy who actually did it, his last name was Gillooly, and he was out of Orient Point. And he lined it up with Bank of New York, and everybody got the financing through the one bank.
Mm.
So it was a
Yeah,
very
without using
simple
the word
process.
construction loan, I'm sure that the bank released the funds proportionately to the progress of the
Yeah, I'm
work.
not sure, how that worked, but I can ask Lance, who lives in one of them, how that, I know the Bank of New York did all the mortgages for them though.
Yeah, we need a lender to work with for this for
Yeah.
sure. And I hear what you say, Peter. Like, I think that actually communicating to the list about getting more information, I think really actually should be even kind of it's technically kind of part of like how we're communicating about this, because there hasn't been a lot of action. I understand what you're saying. Like, we kind of need to wait until we need to wait to ask until we have something to say, until we have
Something to
people
hand
about.
somebody and say, look,
Exactly.
this is it's gonna be
Yeah,
something that
we
they
need
can
this
see and
information
touch.
because look at these
Yes.
things. This is,
Yeah.
no, I totally agree. But I think it would be good to be thinking about what kinds of questions that we would ask, is like almost like, which is like something that we can table, but what are kind of things that would be pre-qualified, to kind of Michael's point of just like, hey, are you in a space where you would want to buy something? Are you looking for a rental? So that we would kind of be able to, I think we should kind of start thinking about that for the folks that are joining the expression of interest list now. So we don't have to go back to everybody
Right.
in the
Gotcha.
future. So that's just kind of that's kind of what I'm thinking. And then we can kind of go back and ask those questions to the folks that are already on the list.
Just
when
a
we have
quick
something to talk to
comment on
them
that
about.
is we
Yeah.
are beginning to expend effort on these different typologies. When I say that, and that would be informed by the respondents. How many 3 bedrooms, how many rental units, are we planning, what are our targets in planning these things? So I'm just going to say I'm anxious for that information so that
Yeah.
we're not spinning our wheels. We have something to base it on.
Also, for instance, here's an example. When I talked to George Hubbard the other day, you know, they're trying to get some sort of affordable housing in Greenport, and it's really horrible. And he was waiting for 45 minutes on the Greenport side to get to Shelter Island. And that is because so many people come here to work because they can't live here. So how do we know that those people wouldn't be people who want rentals? So that's why I'm saying, yes, it has to be a needs assessment thing. Yes, the individual people who need housing, I understand we want to get their names and stuff, but the larger issue is how many people need housing? That's what I'm interested in.
And what types, and, you know.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
what types, rentals,
So-
purchase, et cetera.
Yeah, so I did reach out. I don't want to get us too, but I don't know if you guys saw, I sent an email. I spoke to a woman who did the housing assessment up in Martha's Vineyard just to like understand what it took, and then also to get the cost. So she thought that it could be something potentially really helpful. And if you have a chance to read her housing assessment, it's really awesome. There's lots of graphs. It's really easy to
Where is
like
it?
grasp.
Did you send it
Pardon?
to us? Where is it?
Yeah, it's in the email. I can resend it after this. And so she was saying that a housing assessment could potentially if we were to, you know, bring in a consultant to do one, would be about $7,000 to $10,000, between $7,000 and $10,000, probably on the lower end of the scale because we're such a small community. But I just kind of wanted to put that data point out there as like that's a thing that we could do if that was, yeah. And that's kind of the cost. So
I'm going to confess that I have never done a housing project without a housing assessment informing the project.
Yeah.
My
What's-
assessment is no matter how much housing we build, it won't be enough.
Probably. What's the next thing we have to talk about?
Yeah,
I
let's move
just,
on.
before we move on from this, I actually do want to say, I think that to Amber and Jerry, I would just like to say, I think it is really worthwhile thinking about if we want to have the town pay to do a third-party needs assessment. This is a point that Curtis brought up in the first meeting that he joined us for. And I thought he made the important point, which was that if someone else does the assessment, you can't refute it as being done, you know, whatever, from our subjective view of wanting to make housing happen. And I think it is really important for us to think about making that happen. And if that is going to happen, that should be a sooner rather than later type deal.
Something to add, just from like data nerds, we basically would not be able to start until April because that is when the census data will be finalized. So if we were considering this, it would be a great time to kind of figure out what consultant that we wanted to use and kind of like figure out a budget, but we would actually not be able to, any consultant worth their salt wouldn't start without final census data. So just as a data point.
Amber, did you guys finish up the budget yet?
Yes, and actually, as soon as Liz threw out a number, I started pulling up the budget online so I could see what we have budgeted for the Community Housing Board. So I just got to
Yay!
that
I
point.
think it's $12.67.
It's close. It's close. We have 2,500 set aside for consulting, 2,000 for legal, and 1,000 for advertising. So we don't have a huge budget. We have 5,500.
I would just say that this doesn't necessarily have to pertain to a community housing board endeavor, right? Like the housing board isn't going to build the housing. The town is managing the project to build the housing. And I would say maybe it falls into some level of responsibility for the town to do that outside of this.
I would disagree with that because we have to post it somewhere within the accounting system of the town. But I see Liz smiling at that answer.
Do you have a
But-
contingency line?
We have a contingency line. So, you know, if we move forward with this, we can find the money, and we're not talking like I'm looking, okay, that's, 5,500 that we have. And then we can look for the other 2,500, whatever we
Yeah.
need to get us there. And of course, we're gonna have advertising costs and things like that, but at least we have something to start with. So,
Yeah, and the woman that I spoke to, she was amazing. And like I said, she really did feel like we should be on the lower end of that because we're such a small community. So if that's something that is interesting, maybe I could kind of reach out to her and, maybe we could start kind of soliciting for consultants that might be a good fit for you guys to talk to.
And would that be something that should go through the comprehensive plan group or?
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting idea.
you mean from a money perspective or
No,
just for?
from the
Consultants we use?
bringing it to the board that it needs to be done. Because if the housing group, I'm always trying to look at the negative side. So if the housing group says to the town board, we need to have a needs assessment, I can see the public saying, well, why do the comprehensive plan didn't say that. So.
Well, the comprehensive plan is in process and we're looking at trying to determine the need now. So I would push back on that, but.
I guess the other possibility, and you can tell I'm a pretty soft negotiator by what I'm going to say next, is Chris, do we have any funds that we could combine with town funds to get this done?
Well, that's what's in our budget.
That's what Amber just quoted.
That's what Amber's telling us about. Yeah.
Yes.
We could take it
there's
from
from other
contingency
other
line.
sources, from a 501c that is floating out there, which I forget
you mean
the name
the
of.
SciHop.
Yeah, so I would say it's the town's responsibility is my personal feeling on that. It's
the town's responsibility, but just like there's a senior citizen foundation, if there's monies out there to help with this, we certainly shouldn't turn a blind eye to them.
No, definitely not. I just think that as the town should be able to come up with the budget for that, the SciHop should be able to use their budget for other things that are relating to this, especially on like a information communications front. And
well, why don't we see if we can get a hard price and and if it's on the lower end, maybe some of this becomes academic. So maybe it's in trying to figure out the right consultant and the right price. She did a really in-depth one, for Martha's Vineyard, and we might not need something that's that in-depth to be really useful for our purposes. So maybe there's some, room there.
Well, also we could maybe go to the people that we used for those consultants that we used for the comprehensive plan and see if they have any suggestions. Because
rather than go to consultants, I would go to all the paperwork that was done, all the research that was done in the first round to see what's in there.
Is it like a little booklet that you can read?
I think Christina, we could probably ask Coco to pull out anything housing related for us.
Or something. That would be good.
The
Yeah, I would
other
definitely love that.
benefit of this endeavor would be in taking the project to the banking community. If we have a needs assessment that shows that there's interest in this and it's an overwhelming interest, it makes it easier for the banking community to get behind our projects. If we have a independent, I'll say third party needs assessment that says there's a market that exists for what we're doing, and it's not speculation, it's not data that was generated internally,
right?
It's data that
Okay, so
Right.
I have the accessory dwelling units deal on the agenda. I think that we shouldn't talk about that tonight unless anyone's feeling really passionate about such, but I feel like that's a big undertaking that we just don't have time for.
I would agree. Can we talk about it next time?
Yeah.
I do want to talk about it though.
Can we talk about the talking to the Martha's Vineyard guy? Is that up yet? On the
Sure,
agenda?
let's jump to that. So,
Well-
give us the scoop, Maria.
All I want to know is, I would like to set up a meeting with this guy, and it would be a Zoom meeting like this. And I was thinking it could be if we could think of all of our questions ahead of time, it would be like a workshop situation where we could ask him a lot of questions and he could tell us basically how they, I mean, I've read everything that I can read, but I feel like I would really love to hear from this guy. What, Liz?
No, I love it.
No,
I love that you've read everything. That's all.
Yeah, I just feel like, I will tell you this, guys, and I'm sorry that the housing plans, that it's taking a lot to pull them together. There's no such thing as every entity has their own notion of what a housing plan is. So I'm on the phone with people, getting them to explain how they work. I will tell you this. Some places have trusts and some places have housing authorities. They are quite different as models of financing and funding affordable housing. So that is a discussion I'd love to have after I get all of this stuff coalesced. And Brand, thank you about Block Island. I had a great conversation with them, and they do have some really remarkable stuff that they've done, but they're also a little island that only has about 1,200 people. So, and then Martha's Vineyard is vast compared to Shelter Island. But anyway, I'll get to that. But so the point is, does anyone want to be on a Zoom call with this guy? Liz does.
I will.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So I've got 4
Yeah.
people. Okay, great. So my next question to you is, we were not going to do it on a Thursday night. I'd like to try and do it during a business day when this guy is at his office. What is convenient for you guys? What can I say?
Can we,
I think we should do this via email.
let's do this via email.
Great. Okay. So just
Okay.
let me know. Now we know, you guys let me know what works for you, and then I'll arrange it so that we can all get on the phone with him.
And
Brad.
can I just ask a question here? So
Sure.
is this something that if we're doing this Zoom meeting that we have to have as a public meeting then? Or does this fall into some sort of like research deal?
I don't know
Well,
why.
can this fall under training?
That's a
Yeah.
Bob question, no?
Why would it be public for us to learn about how?
Because you're gathering in
we
a
have-
quorum.
Because we're
Yeah.
discussing,
The quorum.
yeah.
But Bob, can this fall under?
Bob, you're
the-
on mute. You're on mute,
Under the
Bob.
training part.
You don't need to have a public meeting to do training. The public meeting is only if you're going to be discussing substantive town business. So if
Okay.
you guys want to meet for a cheeseburger or to training, or something that's not, where you're not discussing policy, that's fine.
Okay.
We're going to talk about
We're just
another
gathering
town,
information.
another
Yeah.
town policy.
What you need to do with those sort of things, if it's if it's technically like a site visit, you're supposed to go, like I said, when you're there, you're not discussing business. When you come back to your next meeting, you're supposed to outline what occurred at the site visit and discuss it at that point.
Well, I just sent out the email about our site visit. Liz, you can probably, and Chris, you can probably fill in, because I don't know, I did a kind of narrative version. I didn't make it like a short story, but I could have, because Tom Rule is very interesting. But in this one, it will be helpful if we have more than just me asking people on the phone, as I've been doing so far, their model. And we would not be sharing any town business during that meeting with him. Okay, so you guys will email me and we'll coordinate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
So then we just have a update on soliciting applicants for community housing fund. Did the advertisement for
Advisory board.
go into the reporter this week?
No.
I didn't see it.
No, we have had so much on our plate. So many balls in the air. It's like, it's next. We've been dealing with in-house
Turmoil,
what?
turmoil.
No, we've been trying to
For your
fill
honesty,
open
Jerry.
spots with
Drama.
town
You're being
positions.
recorded.
So we're now
Yeah.
moving to committee openings
Yeah.
next week.
Town positions are more important.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like, only so many balls we can keep in the air at once. So we've been working on internal employment positions, and next week we start on committee interviews.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Also,
Um,
speaking of the newspaper, I sent you guys a copy of the letter that I wrote to the Shelter Island Reporter. Did you get it?
Yeah, it was
I
awesome.
did, and it was
Okay, good.
I'm sorry I didn't respond, but it was an awesome letter.
Oh, good. Okay, so it's not going to be in today's, it's not in today's paper.
I already looked. Yeah.
No, he said it had to go in next week's. I don't know why. He said there are no deadlines. They just roll around. Anyway, so it'll be next
Because there
week.
was a ton in there. Yeah.
It's filler.
Yeah.
I
Um,
just want to say that I don't actually think we should be talking about that in this meeting.
okay, why don't we move to the applicants? Because we got so much stuff on here. So does
Hey,
everybody
Chris, I'm
want to
gonna
give
run,
like,
okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
oh, wait,
Thank
Jerry, before you go,
Yes.
could we talk about the land lease thing? Do you guys want to approve that dude to mark up the land lease?
Andrew Lee.
Yeah,
But
Um,
no cost.
I guess we should talk about it on Tuesday at the work session. I mean, I can't,
Okay,
uh,
okay.
okay,
Okay, I'll follow up with you.
Okay.
Wednesday. Okay,
Right.
thanks.
no,
Liz,
Monday.
I just had one
Oh, yeah.
thought on that, and that is I circulated a description of the Man Waring project.
Mhm.
And subject to everybody's input as to what it would consist of in terms of a deal. And as a backbone to discussions with an attorney, I think we should come to an agreement as to this land lease applying to a particular project and what the deal is in its entirety, or with some level of detail, so that the markups are more responsive to the particular needs of the project. I would imagine in some respects the land lease for a rental property will be different than the Man Waring one.
Right. So we're talking about the land lease specifically for the Man Waring project. And I agree that that is just like what we're talking about. So I saw your write-up. I think that that's super important. Right now, what we're just trying to do is Peter has introduced us to a really awesome lawyer who's willing to do this pro bono, but we have to engage with him, like to set up a formal engagement before we can move forward. So absolutely, but I don't want to kind of like lose this pro bono lawyer who could potentially help us. So that's all I'm trying to do here.
Amber,
is, like,
I'll put it
get
on the
set up.
agenda for Tuesday.
Yes.
And
Got it.
Okay.
there's certain content about, or assumptions that are being made about the nature of the town's participation in this agreement, such as that the improvements would be taxed and that the value of the property would be a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes, and it would cover within that agreement issues pertaining to site maintenance as services.
Yeah,
Like-
and so
You're
he
ahead of
actually
us
wanted
right
to-
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Well-
Michael, so basically that is what the lawyer would work with the town. He has a couple different models that I think might
Perfect.
work. And so that's what we're trying to like get to.
To get
So,
to that point,
yes,
right?
absolutely.
Okay.
But
We
let's
need
let
to
the lawyers
engage
do
him.
their business.
Yeah,
I-
he
I
needs to
tend
be
to be
engaged so we
ahead
can,
rather-
it's indemnified. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Chris, I'll talk to you and Liz about that either tomorrow or first thing Monday, okay?
Great.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Yep.
So I just want to say, in terms of the soliciting applicants, I don't think we really need to go through that right now as no one can apply yet. But I've reached out to a couple of people. I saw a couple other people have reached out to a couple of people. Let's finish reaching out to everyone. And Amber, can you just, if for some reason that's not the advertisement, it does not go out next week, can you please let us know?
Yes, I'm like Christina's gonna be my prompter.
Great.
So
Cool.
she will bother me tomorrow and we'll get something drafted.
Great. So the only other thing that's on the agenda is something that Maria and I had spoken about that we're actually taking off of the agenda. the environmental parameters thing that we had spoken about, Maria. So unless anyone has anything else to discuss, making a motion to adjourn would be.
I just have something real, oh, so you go, Maria.
Okay, just really quickly, when I brought up my letter, I just am saying that because I wrote the letter as a private citizen, not a member of the committee.
Yes.
Just
And
wanted to know that.
just to be clear, that's why I said I don't think we should talk about it.
Oh. Okay, well, now it's Peter's turn. Okay.
Okay, I got interviewed a couple of other agents, real estate agents on the island.
Right.
Three, one playing phone tag with, but so far, everybody is 1000% behind this.
Awesome.
Great.
One of them actually had a fantastic idea, which I don't
Cool.
want to bring up right now, but I was like, oh, why didn't anybody ever think of that before?
Cool.
So I'll bring it to the board when, we move along with this.
Great.
Thanks,
Can
you
I ask can I ask a question, Chris? It's Julia.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Both you and Julie. So I just so you know, I'm not whatever. I'm still trying to get into the habit of asking you
You're
guys.
doing great. You're doing great. Yeah, I don't even think you have to ask us. This goes back to the transfer of development rights, and I think it's really for Bob DiStefano. Somebody said that it's in the legislation that's going to be approved in November. I don't think there's anything about transfer of development rights in that Peconic Bay Region Community Housing Fund Act.
That is correct.
Not that I
So,
recall.
Where is
I've
where
really
is
gone
the
with my
transfer
part,
of
but-
development rights legislation that's pending approval?
The town board.
The town board. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Julia, I heard that as well. I heard the same thing that you heard.
I believe it's posted on the website.
Great. Okay, thank you very much.
Julie, do you have any questions?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. And yeah, can I get a,
Make a motion to end the meeting 9:09.
okay,
Seconded.
okay. all in
Oh,
favor,
what?
say Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good